Now, it's best that you use Google Chrome to see the slides, but you can also go to the current screen, and where it says U.S. Air Force, if you look down and to the left, you'll see an icon that looks like a sheet of paper and an arrow. You hover over that and you can download the slides. And as we go through the webinar, we'll be clicking on the slides and progressing. But if you can go ahead and do it now, you might save the trouble later. Okay, now towards the end of this webinar, we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions. So please save your questions to the very end. You should have at least 15 to 20 minutes to ask questions. And we ask that you mute your phone to prevent any hot mics. And towards the end, when you do ask the questions, you can state your name, your last name, and your first name. That way, if we have any follow-up questions for you, we can reach out to you. So we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can, and we'll go in the order that we receive the questions. You can also email our org box, which we will provide to you at the end of this webinar presentation. Please remember to be respectful to each other. And with that, let's get into what you all came to hear about today, which is how to become a FAO. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so today we'll cover the difference between a FAO and a PAS, which stands for Political Military Affairs Strategist. We'll talk about the different ways you can become a FAO, as well as the training and job opportunities. Next slide. So here you can see the main differences between a FAO and a PAS. As you can see in red, a PAS does not need to have that foreign language requirement, and that person doesn't have to come with any expertise in a particular region. So with a PAS, it's usually a one-time assignment that broadens the career of the officer, and it exposes the officer to political military affairs. It usually begins in conjunction with intermediate developmental education, and PAS officers develop a unique skill set that translates across AFSCs, and they gain a strong understanding of interagency partnerships. They typically serve on U.S. headquarters staff, where their broad knowledge of political military affairs allows them to be effective action officers. For example, when I was working at Headquarters Pacific Air Forces, I worked with FAOs as well as PAS officers. And for example, there was a PAS who worked on the Philippines. So it's a one-time assignment for him. He was a pilot, and after that PAS assignment, he went back to flying. On the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see some of the requirements for a FAO, and you'll be able to access these slides after our webinar as well. But you can always go to DoD Instruction 1315.20, as well as Air Force Instruction 16-109. And it will summarize these requirements that we have summarized for you on this slide. You need to demonstrate that you have language proficiency of at least a 2-2. So that would be listening, reading, or speaking. When it's speaking, it can be 1+ or higher. But if it's going to be listening or reading, it should be at least a 2-2. You also need an advanced academic degree in international relations with a focus on a particular region. And then you need to have 6 months or 180 days of in-region experience. So currently we have 357 billets for FAOs, and that includes the rank of 06. We have an inventory of 613 certified FAOs, and in our inventory, let's see. So we have more in the pipeline, and we're aiming to get 821. And of course, that number is subject to change. And the selection is normally done at the 7 to 10 year mark. That would be under the traditional development. So as you all know, in your primary Air Force specialty code, you have to fill out an Airman Development Plan, an ADP. So anyone interested in becoming a FAO should list that um, desire on your ADP. Tell your career functional manager that you want to become a FAO. And for those out there who are in Air Force Reserve or in the Guard, you'll do the same on your Reserve Officer Development Plan. And everyone should have taken the Defense Language Aptitude Battery Test, or DLAB. And some of you who have language abilities will have taken the Defense Language Proficiency Test, or DLPT. So DLAB scores are mandatory for selection to FAO traditional development. So that's by your assignment team. You can list your regional and language preferences for your career field manager, but please be aware that you can be subject to worldwide deployment. So it can be anywhere in the world, not just to your particular region. So your core AFSC functional manager will review your ADP and select the most qualified officers for FAO development. Okay, so again, on this slide, we've listed traditional development. Some people come in under the Olmsted Scholar Program on a Mansfield Fellowship, or international intermediate developmental education or senior developmental education. Now, I'd like to point out that our program is a dual track program. So if you've been talking to Army FAOs or Navy FAOs, this is different. The Air Force believes in having you maintain your core AFSC and be proficient in that, and switching back and forth. So you do a few years in your primary AFSC, and then you become you take on a FAO assignment, a 16 Foxtrot assignment, and then you go back to your primary AFSC. So this way you remain competitive for PME as well as have more opportunities for command. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here we have a few pictures to show you of what people are doing out there in the field. The first one is a major helping the U.S. Army personnel to diagnose and treat some indigenous people in Central America. In the second picture, you have another FAO who's assigned to Indo-PACOM, and he's based in Bangkok, Thailand, but he gets to go to Burma, Cambodia, and India to help with missing POW and MIA records. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I briefly mentioned the traditional development accession path. So this is, again, where your core AFSC assignment team will look at your desire listed on the ADP, and then they will tell you, okay, you're going to become a FAO for this particular area. And if you don't have the language skills already, but you've shown the aptitude through your DLAB scores, they'll send you to Defense Language Institute. And they'll also send you to Naval Postgraduate School to get your international relations degree. If you already have some international experience, then instead of several quarters at NPS, they might make it just a few quarters so that you can get that DoD certification in your region of specialty. Okay, and the in-region training is a minimum of 180 days. Okay, all right, next slide, please. Okay, in-region training, you can find out more if you go to DoD Instruction 1315.20. It's 50% language and culture training and 50% strategic engagement time. So that would be working with an attaché, with a military group, Office of Defense Cooperation, and getting yourself familiar with how a U.S. embassy works and some of the interagencies that you come into contact with. And some of the goals are listed here: immersion in the culture, the history, the language, and making you the go-to person one day, for senior commanders. So You'll also be working closely with the attaches and the SCOs who've been out there with many more years of experience.
Good. Question on hot
All
day
right.
for today.
I think we have a hot mic. Could you please mute your phone? Next slide, please. Here's a map of the different FAO regions. You have NORTHCOM, and please note that SOUTHCOM would include Mexico, and AFRICOM does not include Egypt. Egypt and Israel are grouped under CENTCOM. And then we've got EUCOM as well as INDOPACOM. That name changed not too long ago to INDOPACOM to reflect our partners from India all the way to the edges of the Pacific Ocean. Okay, next slide. Okay, here we talk about the direct accession path. So the Air Force, of course, wants to capitalize on any existing skills in the force so that we don't have to spend the money and time to train you. So if you already meet the language requirements, your scores will be at least 2-2. You will have had at least 180 days of in-region experience and also an advanced academic degree focused on your region of specialty. So the degree needs to match the experience and the language. For example, if you are a Russian speaker, but all of your language and your experience and your degree and everything is in South America, then that would not apply. You need a language that is relevant to that particular region. So if everything else says Southcom, then it should be Spanish or Brazilian. Okay. If you don't have some of these requirements, it is possible to have a constructive credit waiver, and we've listed some examples, like if you've done a full tour as an assistant air attaché or security cooperation officer, if you participated in the MPEP or military personnel exchange program, if you've been a part of the Afghanistan, Pakistan HANDS training program, or if you've had some other foreign speaking overseas developmental education. The DA board meets on a rolling basis, and the selected nominees are certified after successful match with an available billet. Okay, so for more instructions, you can go to our MilSuite portal, which we will list at the end of this webinar. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, IAS sustainment training. Again, we refer to DoD Instruction 1315.20, 40 hours of sustainment training every year. And here we've listed some programs like AFSOS, Foreign Service Institute, DoD Regional Security Studies Center, or the Joint FAO course Phase 2. Phase 1 you would have gone to if you were to come in under traditional development. Your training manager would have sent you to Phase 1, and so for sustainment you'd go to Phase 2. And then language programs, we've got really a wealth of resources such as AFC-LC. They fund LEAP, which stands for Language Enabled Airman Program. And by the way, that's another good way to show your career functional managers that you want to be part of the FAO program, that you've taken the time to go to a foreign country to learn the language and immerse yourself in the culture. Some existing FAOs have also used individual tutoring programs from the private sector. And there's always distance learning through Defense Language Institute, as well as Joint Language University and SOFT's online culture and training. Next slide, please. Okay, so next we'll have slides on the Attaché and SCO program, and we have Mr. Andrew Radke on the line to tell you more about these programs. Mr. Radke, over to you.
Thank you, Passion. Hopefully everyone can hear me. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today. As Passion mentioned, I'm Mr. Andrew Radke. I'm the SCO manager over here at SAF-IA. My colleague is Ms. Jackie Pinkham, and we manage the program together. And our branch that we work for incorporates SCO and Attaché. and I'll be going to briefly about both programs. And basically, a lot of it is similar, how we manage attaché and SCO, but there are some key differences as well. And I'm going to start with the attaché program. As you can see from this slide, we have both officer and NCO attaché positions that we manage here at SAF-IA. Within the officer ranks, we have SDO DATS, which is the senior ranking military person in a country embassy that we have. We also have air attachés and assistant air attaché positions. And as you can also see, those go from major all the way up to major general positions. We also manage NCO billets, which are the Ops NCO or OPSCO positions. And those are 140, and they're spread out through all the embassies as well. There could be multiple positions depending on the size of the embassy. And we are present in 114 U.S. embassies, and you'll see that we, through DIA assets, have 14 C-12 aircraft around the world as well. We go to the next slide. And next is the program I manage is the Security Cooperation Program. And we have 139 of these positions, pretty much spread out 50-50 between foreign area officer positions, and the rest are within core AFSC positions. And as you can see there as well, we have rated positions, C-12, which are DSCA assets, Defense Security Cooperation Agency assets, and we have SCOs present in 72 countries. That's a very brief overview of SCO. Let me just go into a couple key differences between what an attaché does and what a SCO does. For attachés, their chief mission is intelligence, not intelligence necessarily, but information collecting. This is not covert. This is an individual who was registered as an attaché in the host country. And an attaché can have the rank of an SDO DAT, which is the senior ranking military member of that embassy, whom the SCO would actually work under. And to become an attaché, there is extensive screening, including interviews. If there is a spouse, the spouse will be interviewed as well. And there are polygraphs that has to be done as well as part of that screening. So it is quite extensive. And the training includes JMAS, which is the Joint Military Attaché School, which is about 4 months long. The chief umbrella that the DIA works under is the Defense Intelligence Agency, or the COCOM J2, which is the Intelligence Directorate for the information that is gathered. For the SCO, on the other hand, that is more under the umbrella of engagement and advocating for the country that they work for in such areas as foreign military sales, training, and planning. And just working really a lot of it, as you see in the picture, side by side with the military or security services of that country of where they're located. And the big chain of command difference with SCOs is that they will work under the J5 of the COCOM, of which the area they fall under. Standard SCO training includes going to the overseas course at the Defense Institute for Security Cooperation Studies at Wright-Patt. There is a SCO orientation, NCAR orientation here at the Pentagon. And there's also FAC training, which is the Foreign Affairs Counterterrorism training. There could be language training involved, which is done at DOI. And for our pilot positions, if the pilot is not qualified in the C-12, we would send them to 5 weeks of training to do that. So that's a very, very brief overview of both programs. And if you have questions at the end of this briefing, I'll be standing by for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Radke.
And I should say here under our last slide, on the left-hand side is really our attaché part, where we have Mr. Pittman and we have Chief Master Sergeant Lisa Whipple, who handle most of the officer assignments, including the senior ranking officer positions. And at the bottom, you'll see Master Sergeant Jackie Graybill. She handles the enlisted attaché assignments. On the right-hand side is myself and Miss Jackie Pinkham, and we manage the, as I mentioned before, the program. And we all work under Mr. James Yarborough, who's our branch chief.
Hi, this is Captain Julincy again. So here you have the IAS program contacts. Our branch chief is Lieutenant Colonel Huxall. He's a he's an AFRICOM FAO. We have Major Matthew Steins, who is a CENTCOM FAO, and myself, Captain Julincy, who's an INDOPACOM FAO. Our chief of training is Mr. Jeffrey Louie. And then we have Mr. Richard O'Neill, who does security cooperation policy and support. And the person who does IAS assignments or FAO assignments is Lieutenant Colonel Tanner, who's at AFPC in San Antonio. So with that, we have lots of time for questions. So we ask that you state your name, at least your last and first name, and we'll take questions in the order they are received. And Major Matthew Steins will be assisting me in answering some of these questions.
All right, folks, let's start with the type questions. So our first question is, do pilots need to be a FAO to get the C-12 billet? If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Radke, that is correct. You do have to be a certified FAO in order to fill those C-12 billets working as an attaché.
That's my understanding as well. You need to be a FAO. But let me double check on that for our attaché section before I get back, because in SCO, it's different. For SCO, we have specific 11 mic positions, mobility pilot positions. We do not put FAOs in those positions. But for attaché, my understanding is it is a FAO who happens to be a pilot, but I'll get back to you before we end this conference.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Radke. All right, for the second question, it looks like, how does a nurse corps officer without an advanced academic degree in IA but has a DLPT score and SEI in IHS qualify to become a FAO? Well, you kind of answered your own question. That unfortunately, no, you cannot become a FAO. However, you can capitalize on your deep language, regional expertise, and cultural skills by way of taking part in the International Health Specialist Program. So if you need a good POC, take a look at this last slide, push an email to our org box, and I'll try to respond with the latest and greatest for a good POC for that program. All right, next question. I am at MPS right now for an Africa degree with DLI follow-on. I am not a FAO, but plan to apply DU. Although my degree is Africa, I have 24 units in European studies. Am I eligible to apply for either region or only Africa? Is holding a cert for Europe absolutely necessary? So for this question, I'd like for you to push this to our org box, and we'll get to this question, which is very parochial and unique to your circumstance, and get you an informed response. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next question. What's the timeline and what actions do I need to take? I think this person has joined the meeting late. So what I'm going to ask you to do for that question, for the benefit of the group in advancing the discussion, is to refer to the recorded session of this, and Captain Duffy, push an email message to the org box, and we'll try to get you up to speed offline. All right, next question. Do you need to take both the DLAB and DLPT to be competitive for FAO, or is one or the other enough? So you need to make a minimum, I want to say it's 95 on the DLAB to qualify you for the category 1 languages. The higher the score, the more difficulty of languages that you're eligible for. We try to balance when we receive new cohort members that have been competitively selected by their primary AFSC. We try to match them, balance their desires against the needs of the military or the Air Force FAO program, rather. So I hope that that kind of makes sense. But regarding the DLAB, that's how it impacts what type of category language you can be assigned. If you've got DLPT, great, but that's not a deal breaker. What we like to do, like say for example, if there's a region you're interested in, such as Southcom, and you come to us with a 3-3 in Spanish, then what we'd like to do is send you off to learn Brazilian Portuguese if you've already got like a matching degree or you've got the certain skills within the Southcom region. Just of note, you can only take the DLAB twice during your career. There are some study guides available on Amazon, and I'm sure if you browse the web enough, you'll find numerous other sources to assist with bringing your DLAB scores up. All right.
Major Steins, this is Captain Ju Lindsay. I also like to add that if you want to see the DLAB, let's see, the minimum scores, you can go to attachment 2 of AFI 16-109. For example, category 1 would be languages such as French and Spanish, and it says the minimum DLAB score is a 95. If you're looking at category 4, which would be Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, the minimum score is 110. Again, that's AFI 16-109, attachment 2. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see here. Next question. If an MPEP tour is completed, what else is required to become a FAO? Is the International Relations Master's degree waived and only the MPS certificate is needed? It depends on what type of MPEP tour you are completing and what level of language your language scores upon completion of the tour. Because some jobs require additional training, such as discs, for placement into like a SCO assignment, or you may require some additional training such as JMAS. And then, so there's other additional things that are required before we can just outright certify an MPEP to a person, and it varies depending on the individual and their unique circumstances. And no, the MPS certificate is not waived for those who are traditionally developed and they come to us with an international relations degree from, say, Troy University or American Military University. What we like to do is try to baseline them so they can, if they meet the criteria, so that they're able to meet the criteria for the IDE credit awarded through the FAO Fellowship Program. All right. Next question, is there a time on station requirement to apply? Also, how are FAO positions viewed in promotion and school boards? So, no, not necessarily a time on station requirement to apply because the way we are selecting the FAOs for traditional development, it kind of aligns itself with the call for IDE window of eligibility application opportunities. So socialize that issue more so with your core AFSC to get a feel for how they rack and stack eligible applicants for the FAO fellowship opportunity. How are FAO positions viewed at promotion and school boards? Well, the FAO position in and of itself will not necessarily hurt you. They look at other factors when it comes into promotion, such as stratification, deployments, decorations. There's all sorts of things that go into the mix when the board is scoring records and making a determination for who gets promoted and who doesn't. So I just can't say that, you know, FAO is going to be the be all end all in terms of your career success. All right. Does having an advanced academic degree meet communicated requirements? Generally shorten the FAO application and spin up process. It can if you've already had the IR degree and it meets the criteria. However, again, as I stated earlier, we want to establish that baseline by trying to get as many people possible through an approved graduate level education program. It could be a certification from MPS at this time, but we're looking into other options for training and implementation as far as FAO development is concerned, looking ahead in the near future on the East Coast. All right. So we're going to stop right here, and I want to turn it over to the phone line. If we could take a couple of calls on the phone. Does anybody dial in?
Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Go for it.
So I'm a second lieutenant, and I just barely started a master's program. Is there something besides just doing, like, trying to get my IR degree that I can do now to prepare, other than, I mean, obviously I have D-Lab and all those different things, but to make me as competitive as possible when it gets to the point where I can apply?
Right. So you want to kick butt at language. Make sure that, what is your degree you're pursuing in?
International.
What is the area of regional concentration of this degree?
So it doesn't have like a specific region, and that's part of my concern. It's through the Harvard Extension School, and so I don't know, like, so they don't have the only specific countries they had areas in were not necessarily ones that go with my language or with what I was interested in, and I didn't know if that counted anyway because they're just like very general, and so I didn't. There's
Okay.
no certificate. So
All right,
just
that's
kinda-
that's no problem. What we would do is, let's say hypothetically speaking, you were to be selected for the traditional development, they would balance your D-Lab score, that aptitude, and we would balance that against what your desires are, and we would also look at what your practitioner experience is with working with partner nations, allies, overseas deployed type of experience. Had you had any advisor type of experience? And then we'd also look at your track record of DLPT exam scores. So it's a balance of what qualifications you come to us with, placed against what we need to get our mission done. Does that help?
yeah. And what's the soonest that I could get? At what point in my career can I get involved in that where we're actually going back and forth and you're helping me with my development?
7 to 10 year mark is when we
Okay,
typically look at you. And don't worry, all is not lost. We stated this earlier in the brief. There's also the direct accession, whereby we want you to have as many of the criteria met. If you download the slides, flip through it, you can see the direct accession slide. And there's some prerequisite requirements where where an applicant would come to us with a regionally focused academic degree, hopefully some substantiating documents, such as a decoration write-up or OPRs that capture engagement with a partner nation utilizing that LREC skills, language, regional expertise, and cultural skills, as well as foreign language to execute the mission. And so we would look at that once those opportunities for IDE eligibility have been exhausted, and you'd like to come to us by means of direct accession. But at this point, what you can do is make sure you're part of LEAP, take advantage of those language intensive training experiences that they offer. Also look at deployments where you can apply some already pre-established language skills and apply your regional expertise and cultural understanding in order to help get the Air Force mission done. So those things matter when it comes to our program and we're doing our assessment of your knowledge, skills, and abilities and trying to optimize those who are fortunate enough to be selected for our fellowship opportunity, when we're trying to optimize their training pipelines.
Okay, thank you. And I'm out of the office today, so I don't have the slides.
No worries.
This is all
Okay.
available. They'll be emailed later. Is that right?
Yeah,
Or is on the email?
we're recording this session right now, so it should be available. And if you email our org box, someone will push you a copy of the slides.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next question from the phone line.
Yes, hi there. It's Major Ramos.
Hello, Major Ramos.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
Will a certificate in international affairs with a regional focus qualify for this FAO? Or
That
does it have
alone,
to be a master's or bachelor's level?
we would like for you to have a graduate degree with regional focus.
Okay.
The certificate is not enough. We may be able to award a constructive credit waiver if all of your windows of eligibility for IDE have been exhausted. Then you come to us for direct accession credit, and we'd look to award you some type of constructive credit waiver experience if you have had in theater experience and you can demonstrate that you have been using LREC skills working with the partner nation. I hope
Okay,
that
this,
helps.
yes,
Okay.
thank you. And one
Okay.
last question. Well, I guess
Uh-huh.
it's a statement. This is my last look for my ID, and I did state on there that I wanted to do this path, and I chose a couple of schools that are in the region that I wanted to be in.
hmm
What are the chances for a nurse corps officer to be selected for those things?
Unfortunately, the nurses are precluded from participation. However, they can
Okay,
take part in the International Health Specialist Program.
thank you.
Okay. All right. One more from the phone line, and then we're going to go back to the chat box questions.
This is Andy Radke interjecting before we get any more phone calls. I did check with Attaché for the question about if you have to be a FAO to be a pilot, or C-12 pilot as an Attaché position. The answer is yes, you do need to be a FAO pilot to do that type of Attaché job.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Radke. All right, audience, let's turn our attention back to the chat box. There's a Captain Ho. He asks, is there a quota for each language or region that must be met each year? As previously stated in the slides, we have an inventory and we have a desired objective for each region that we're trying to meet. That slide shows some of the shortfalls. So some years for example, some years we're trying to plus up on AFRICOM. Sometimes some years we're trying to plus up on CENTCOM, but seldom do we have a shortage of like Romance language speakers and UCOM and Southcom. Um, by virtue of the history of this country, our education system, and close proximity to Southcom, we don't have a lot of difficulty with finding fills there. So typically, we're trying to build up our Arabic speaking and our pool or inventory, talent inventory of Russian speakers. All right. Next question. It's Benjamin Duffy. Can you divulge the most recent selection rate, or is that asking too much? I'm not sure what is meant by that, but if you send me an email to our org box, we can take a closer look at that and try to get you a research answer. All right. We talked about, let's see, Ramos, Renell. Will a certificate in IA with regional focus qualify, or has it be? We've already addressed that. Next question, is there a FAO application available and when is the window open? We've addressed that. Do deployments of your area of focus matching your DLPT language satisfy immersion requirements? That's a good question, but it depends on what you are doing during that deployment and how it's been documented. And it's up to the CFM's discretion and the panel, leadership panel presiding over the review of your practitioner experience as it's brought to bear on meeting um, FAO job requirements. So it's a really subjective thing and it varies from person to person. All right. Judge JAG, right now, no, we don't have them serving as FAOs, but I can look into whether or not we have them serving as PAS people. So just push me an email on that. Pole Sander, Major Pole Sander, and I'll try to get a informed response to you on that.
And Major Stein, this is
Yep.
Andy Radke. If there are no FAO opportunities for a JAG, we do have specific JAG for specifically in the SCO that are coded for a JAG officer.
Awesome.
So if that's an area that a particular JAG would like to go into, they should let their assignment team know at AFJA that would be something they're interested in doing
hmm
for a future assignment.
hmm hmm All right. Thank you for that. So then we've got Captain Sanchez here. The question is AAD tuition out of pocket? Well, the first advanced academic degree, it's up to your discretion how you want to utilize your tuition assistance. Just understand that there are TA rules whereby if you take the money, you're going to accrue an active duty service commitment. And the same rules apply if you want to take advantage of our exception to policy to utilize tuition assistance for a second master's degree. Okay. And then the rest of the question, 3-3 in Tagalog language. That's excellent. I hope that Captain Sanchez is capturing his aspirations for Paycom FAO on his OPRs and push statements in Talent Marketplace in the ADP. I would still take the DLab. We like to have for all of our FAOs have a DLab exam taken, and it helps us to assess talent when we have the DLab on file for applicants. All right, next question. If you push us, this is Captain Tibbs. This question, I think I'll pass the mic over to Captain Julinzi to talk about how do reserve officers become FAOs.
Okay, Captain Tibbs, I'm going to email you. That way we can establish direct connection, and I can explain to you how I became a FAO. Okay.
Great, thank you. Next one is Nikki Moon. Unfortunately, there's no rank with the title. Slide 3 says an advanced academic degree in IR is required. Do you mean the AAD program? I think we've pretty much established that, no, you don't necessarily have to come to us with an AFIT MPS degree. This question's worded a little bit confusing, but we've established several times throughout the course of this presentation that you can obtain an accredited advanced academic degree with regional focus. We will honor that. However, for those who come to us through traditional development, we try to establish a baseline by sending them out to MPS so that they, at minimum, receive some CFM approved international relations graduate level academic training, and it also satisfies the partial fulfillment of the requirements for the FAO fellowship program. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Any further questions there? All right.
If nobody else has a question, I have a second question I asked earlier. I think they mentioned that you may not get the language that you have already learned. What are the odds, especially if you wanted to do a different language, what are the odds of that happening?
It depends. Because let's say, for example, you're a Farsi speaker. Well, we want you to be the optimal CENTCOM foreign area officer for the Air Force, for the DoD as possible. So if you've got the DLab score that qualifies you for Category 4 language, then we want to get you to Arabic. Or if you come to us with Japanese, then we want you to learn Korean. If you've got the DLab score, which is some indication of your aptitude for foreign language acquisition. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you know where does Korean fall on that list? Is that a Category 3?
It's going to be a Category 3. So Category 3 would and Captain Julinzi, if you have the 16109 available, Category 3 is going to consist of like Russian, the Russian language family. It's also going to consist of the Persian dialects, Urdu, Hindi, Farsi, Dari. I think you may be able. Go ahead.
So under attachment 2 in AFI 16-109, Korean is listed as 63.
Cat 4.
Yeah, Cat 4, minimum DLab score of 110. And if you were to go to DLI, it would be 63 weeks. So it takes a long time to pick up Korean. And that's same category as Pashto, Japanese, Chinese, Arabic.
So just to clarify, so if Korean is already the language that I have, does that open the door to other languages, or do you generally try to push them back into Korean because it's a higher level language?
If you have Korean, we would look to try to either get you to Japanese or Chinese. It depends on where the deficiencies are in the inventory. And then we would also look at your DLab score.
Okay, and going somewhere not in Paycom is unlikely?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Hey, this is Cam Winston. I dialed in a little late, but I was just curious. Did y'all already mention DLAP score-wise? What do you all usually like to see for FAO?
Captain Julinzi, I'll let you take that.
Okay, for DLAB scores, please go to AFI 16-109, attachment 2. It has a list of the different minimum scores. It depends on what language you're talking about. For example, if it was Turkish, that's a category 3 and the minimum score is 105. If it's Japanese, it's category 4, minimum score is higher, it's 110. Something like Spanish or French would be category 1 and minimum score is 95. Does that answer your question?
Okay, all right. So 123 is bueno. Or okay,
Oh,
gotcha.
oh yes, that's
Okay,
above. Yeah.
all right, awesome.
Any further questions?
How much longer until you guys post so I can review and the whole brief? How or is it posted now immediately after this, or should I wait a day?
You're going to have to wait maybe a week or two because DCS has to work its magic and then it spits out the brief.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Next question. Going once. Going twice.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Hey, this is Kevin Gomez. Just calling. I'm currently on my DML cycle, and you just said you might release the brief in about a week, or two. So I did miss the first like 15, 20 minutes. I'm currently not. I'm overseas and dialing in from home. But in terms of being in this DML cycle, I've attended ISOs, the Inter-American SOS. I'm in LEAP, and just by talking with my assignments team, our release for applications comes out in June. I just wanted to hear from you guys if that's something that you guys are also tracking. Is that the timeline right now?
Oh, your question was regarding assignment release for cohort selection for FAO Fellowship? Is that correct?
For FAO applications. So I'm currently in the winter VML. So I was told in June I'm a 13N, and I was told in June that that you guys or they will be releasing the application for FAO. Is that the timeline?
That's an easy one to answer. So reach out to your chief of officer assignments and get a feel for how they want to solicit applications for the FAO Fellowship opportunity. Okay.
Understood. I appreciate it.
All right. Looks like we've got a couple of type questions that have come in. Captain Rufus, Indo-PACOM. Do we work through our functional team and assignments process to apply for SCO? No. I'll let Mr. Radke speak to that one. Andy, are you?
That's a good question. I'm here. It depends if it's a core AFSC job, which about approximately half of our positions in SCO are core AFSCs. Yes, you would work through the traditional AMS system or now Talent Marketplace to make sure that that's known that you wish to become a SCO or do an overseas assignment, that kind of capacity. We will also advertise our positions approximately 1 to 2 months before our assignment cycle match in MyPERS. And that information is supposed to go out by the assignment teams out to their audiences or their core personnel in that field so that individuals can apply to us of their desires to become a SCO for that assignment cycle. But it does depend. It's not a release because you would still be technically doing that AFSC job in that SCO position, but you still need permission from your assignment team at AFPC to do such a job. Hope that answers your question.
All right. Next question. Is it better to have breadth of language proficiency in the languages? Is it better or develop a deep knowledge understanding of one primary language? It depends on what your professional and personal aspirations are. Leverage against how it enables you to get the mission done. See here. And then with time, you're going to develop that breadth and depth of LREC skills. It's not something that we all just come here with. So, all right, next question. Any recommendations for AAD for PACOM? So if you can perform a Google search, review some of the curriculums and plans of study and syllabi from different accredited institutions that meet the criteria for tuition assistance, work with your education counselor, do a personal assessment of what program meets your interests and go from there. I mean, a lot of folks come to us with requests with degree plans from American Military University, Troy, Syracuse. So we had a person on the call talking about how they were going to the Harvard Extension School for their IR degree. But we would hope that the international relations degree that you choose, program you choose to matriculate into, has at least 12 credit hours of regional focus. Next question. Phone line, chat box. All right, folks, if there are no further questions, thank you so much for joining us today. Once the recording is made available, we will send it out through the distro list so that you all can retrieve this information later. Please be sure to email our org box with any save rounds or follow-on questions based on the information presented in this presentation. Have a great day.